Hello and welcome to Raising Anchor, your podcast and source for all things Rhode Island FC. I'm your host, Matt Entrican, coming to you on this Thursday, May 8th. RIFC exits from the Open Cup, falling 2-1 to the New England Revolution. What went wrong? What went well? And well, we're going to talk about that and kind of find what the storylines in between where we can discuss. Then we're going to talk a little bit later with Chris Moulton from the Union Report as he'll give us a preview of Monterey Bay FC traveling here to Centerville Bank Stadium this Saturday. Joining me as always, looking so fly in the Defiant 1636 kit, is the one and only Jason Carey. Jason, how is it going, my friend?
I'm doing pretty great. Got to see Open Cup for the first time in 111 years or something.
Because you were there for the last one.
Because I was there before, because I'm that old. I could feel it in my knees,
Whatever the secret is to your fountain of youth, tell the listeners.
Speaking of being old, this is a busy period for the players, and they get some rotations here. Like, coach, sub me out. Like, where's it's a long week for us.
I just off the cuff. Do you happen to know who the oldest player on this team is?
No.
It is one Maxi Rodriguez, who has been putting in
29
a lot of distance on his legs right now. He's no Koke Vegas where he can last an extra decade if he takes care of his body. Definitely gonna be some mileage and some probably much needed rotation. Hard to find it with all of the injuries that we've had across this team over the last few weeks. But this this home stretch still not over. We may be into 3 games here in 7 days, but we have 2 more. So basically 5 games in 14 days. That's a long stretch. And then when you include the Open Cup, that's a total of 6 games. So it is going to be a wild time ahead. You're already getting points for wearing the Defiance kit.
So it's funny is I got home from work and I was basically wearing to work like the same shirt you were, just a blue polo with some random design. So we would have been twinsies. So good thing I saw my jersey here, put it on, and I was just like, whatever, I'm just gonna keep this on for the pod. So
that's okay. So hey, let's get ready. Let's just get right into this and let's talk about this Open Cup game. First and foremost, let's do the vibe check. It's the second game in front of 9,500, almost close to a sellout. I haven't been able to confirm it yet, but I think it may have been one of the highest recorded attendance games on the night on that Wednesday performance, as all of the USL Championship teams kind of got rattled against their MLS opponents. What was the overall experience for you in your second game at Centerville Bank Stadium?
Yeah, second match there, and it was fantastic to see 9,500 people on a Wednesday night when I think we were talking about one of the finals not too long ago only had 8,000 people at it. In the finals, that's where your team could actually win a legitimate trophy, not just the earning the right to continue on in the competition here like we were playing for last night. So the fact that so many people are showing up, and really having a good time and really enjoying the vibes of the stadium. I mean, like I saw a post on RIFC's subreddit earlier about people like, hey, this stadium's amazing. Like, this is so much fun. There's a few pain points, but overall, everyone is really excited and I think surprised, especially depending on the circles that you fall into. There was a lot of naysayers back in the day. I think a lot of them have kind of quieted down, but that probably spread to some people and they're like, I don't know about this, especially if they're not soccer sickos,
We ran into Governor McKee and asked him, what were his overall thoughts, and beyond just being able to enjoy the game and the experience, he's very much enjoying the position he's in of being able to kind of shut down and shut up those naysayers themselves, those detractors. Thinking into the game itself, fireworks again during the singing of the national anthem. I did confirm with general manager Paul Byrne. I was like, hey, you're setting a dangerous precedent here. And he said that is not going to be something that you should expect to see game after game. He didn't say when it would stop. He did mention that it would, of course, be there for the big fireworks show displays. But we were talking like, hey, we're getting addicted to that, especially when the first goal gets scored. That was a phenomenal experience. I saw Defiance having to have a conversation with the fire marshals over the deployment of the smoke inside the stadium. They had never seen that at a soccer event or a sporting event in general. So there was a lot of concerns about that was going off, and they were trying to coordinate. I guess they maybe didn't understand what that expectation looked like, and that had already been cleared at the stadium. So that was an interesting thing to see. But overall, I mean, like you said, soccer in the Open Cup returns to Pawtucket. Tim McDuff from Defiance has been doing a lot of research lately, and there's been a couple of good articles that have come out lately about the Open Cup and kind of, paying its homage to the fact that it started here at Coates Field back in 1914. And I went back to say, like, okay, well, when's the last time it was in Rhode Island? We did have Open Cup action with the Stingrays back in 1997, but the last time it was actually played in Pawtucket was over 100 years ago. So the fact that it gets to kind of come back to its birthplace would have been really exciting to get the win. We'll talk about that in a second. But the last thing I want to ask you before we move on, because I don't know where else to put this, is now that the Revolution do advance, they are going to be playing a game at Providence College in front of less than 2,000 people. Is that not just the weirdest thing that you go from the quote unquote Division I team who doesn't have the logistics in place, that they can't even find a stadium to continue to grow the competition and see a 10,000 plus, fan experience? Is this just the biggest insult? Is this the legacy of Don Garber manifested?
Yeah, I was also going to ask. I'm not familiar with PC's field. Is that a soccer specific field?
No, it's just an athletic field.
Okay,
that has
because I
a
was going to say
rectangle for
maybe
soccer.
we got them addicted to soccer specific fields, and they're like,
I'm curious why they're choosing Rhode Island of all places. I didn't know if there was some tactical like tomfoolery saying like, hey, like we just played in Rhode Island once. Look how lucky we are, so we're going to do it again. I mean, the announcement came so quickly after the victory that they must have planned that field and that logistic. But again, you're the New England Revolution. There's got to be a field somewhere that can accommodate at least 5,000 fans. I don't know. It feels like a slap in the face of the Open Cup. It feels like a slap in the face of the Revs fans saying like, well, we can't trust you to even, get this many people to show up to a midweek game in a matter of a couple of weeks. So we're going to do the best we can.
Which is interesting. I didn't count the number of Revs fan, but there was quite a bit of them there. Right. And they weren't all just in the supporter section. We talked about that in this community. There are a lot of people who have maybe grown up watching that team for 30 years. Hashtag not LMLS podcast. So maybe they had a little bit of, kind of identity crisis there. We ran into a fan. You were trying to convince him to convert.
He was already convinced. But then when the Revs scored, he did like the excited clap. And like he looked at me and said, hey, I'm sorry. I'm like, if what you said is true, and he said it in front of Chip on Chip's honor, I'm fine with you again. And I've said this multiple times. I went on the Revolution recap earlier today. We talked about it, and spoiler alert, Seth said hashtag not on MLS podcast like 4 times just to really rub it in. But I said it a million times, and I will continue to reinforce that.
They do cover an MLS team.
Yeah, but it's completely acceptable to be a fan of both of these organizations. I don't have to love the New England Revolution. I don't have to be involved in them. And if fans are, that's fine. There's plenty of soccer space here in New England to be a fan of both. Just in these particular matches, you got to celebrate. You got to root for the home team. You got to root for the underdog every single time.
Yeah, and the draw worked out like in our quote unquote favor to allow us to have this match. But it could be a long time before we actually play them again, right? Next year, who knows what MLS, how they will continue to enter this tournament. Who knows who will maybe we'll run into someone and not advance and vice versa with them.
We could end up in Division 1 one day and have to wait to enter the tournament at the same round as them. So we wouldn't see them unless we both advance. This is a limited, fabled experience. It's, people are saying this is a rivalry. Like, okay, sure. For the 90 minutes. Yes, you're battling for New England. You're battling for that reason. But after this, fans are going to spend a lot more time outside of those 90 minutes that have already passed talking about their individual soccer fandoms, their soccer culture, and there's just plenty of spaces where you can be both. So anyone that's been force-fed the narrative, you have to love one or the other, you can't be a fan of both, don't pay attention. The loudest voices online are often the most wrong ones, so don't pay attention to that. I do want to ask you, though, before we move on to the game itself, only one USL team now still in the hunt for the Open Cup. Does that make all of us Pittsburgh Riverhounds on elimination days?
Oh, I'm definitely rooting for them as the underdog to go through. I mean, I would love for Bob Lilly his way through that tournament. And just imagine him making it to the final and just making it the most abysmal defensive match ever. Even if they don't win, just take it to the gritty end. It's unfortunate that more of the teams didn't make it through, but sometimes that's just going to happen. And the reality is with the resources they have, kind of expected. It doesn't happen like this, though, every year. When we went back in the lead up to this, looked through the history, the Revs have actually lost to championship team, I think 4 or 5 times in the last 10 years. So it's not uncommon for it to happen. It's just the way the cookie crumbled this year. A lot of these championship teams actually took them to the final minute. I mean, on the first day, it took extra time for 2 MLS sides to beat championship sides. And then, Phil Baki's El Paso, they were in reach. I don't know what happened the second half there. I mean,
El Paso's flying too high to the sun right now, and their wings are getting burned.
They got Icarus.
And we don't need to talk about Tampa Bay getting swept off the floor by Orlando. But listen, these are the narratives. So if you're going to continue with the Open Cup, and I hope people do, just remember that you now have to be a Bob Lilly fan for the remainder of the Open Cup run. And hey, that's great for us because we face them in a couple of weeks, and the more mileage they have to put, it gives us an advantage. So I'm completely on board with it. I did see in the news the Pope was announced today, and when it first came out that he would be an American Pope. And I promise this is hashtag not a Pope podcast, but someone, I think John Morrissey, put a picture of Bob Lilly's face over the Pope.
I saw that, yeah.
And right now, I believe. Okay, I'm believing in Pope Lilly. So we'll see what happens on that front. But let's get into this game and let's kind of unpack where things went really well and where things kind of fell off the rails here, so to speak. And let's get into the formations first and foremost, so that way we can really start to unpack exactly what happened here in Coach Cano's selection. For starters, Jason, you were absolutely right. He's picked his cup keeper. He even went on to reinforce that in the post-press interview, where Jackson Lee, for all intent and purpose, will continue to be the keeper for now the Jägermeister Cup. He is the man between the sticks. So you had Jackson Lee in net, and then more of that 4-2-3-1 that can shift and metamorphosize into the 3-5-2. But in that back line, you had Aldair Sanchez out on the left. Frank Nodarse returns to the squad in that left center back role, paired with Grant Stoneman. Rio Hope Gunn gets his third start. Unfortunately, now the streak is over as they did not get the result, but Rio Hope Gunn on that right back side. And then in that middle double pivot, Amos Shapiro-Thompson continuing to demonstrate a new level of gamesmanship, tenacity, something that it's just been really exciting to see him just kind of transform into, partnered alongside the ever-vigilant Clay Holstead. And then that midfield three of Noah Fuson out on the left side, so he finally gets to drop back and be a through and true winger, paired up with Maxi Rodriguez once again in the center of that midfield, and Jojea Quizera out on the right. Chico gets the starting nod, returning again to this game. He played a long time. We asked Coach after the game about his minutes. He calls him Deeks, by the way. So that's his next evolution. It's Albert Dequa into Chico, back to Deeks now. So Deeks getting the start. He was only supposed to go 45 minutes to manage his fitness and make sure that he's getting the minutes to get to full speed again. And Coach had a conversation and said, hey, we want to run you to 60, 65. Are you comfortable with that? And Chico said, absolutely. Not sure he had a tremendous impact on the game overall, but it was at least good to see a through and true striker back up at the front. Jason, overall thoughts on this roster and the way it was built? Are you surprised by anything?
No, I mean, it was close to a unchanged lineup here from the last match. You just kind of swap Brito and Chico in and out there. The 4-back line to a certain extent is continuing here. I know that in possession, we kind of still shift and kind of change into a 3-back line. There's a lot of movement throughout the game, but it seems like defending with 4 seems to be the new kind of thing for this team.
It's the new meta.
I mean, at least until player health continues, maybe, it improves at that point. Maybe we'll see some change, but we're still shifting into a 3 in attack. So I'm curious to see if that is, like you say, the new meta, or is this just temporary because everyone's injured?
Well, I mean, I feel like we're starting to grow an abundance of defenders. I mean, in this game, we saw Frank Nodarse finally get the unlock and go into that right wing back spot that we have been waiting for all season, when Aime Mabika got his first minutes with the team here in the Open Cup. I mean, Nodarse has to be the tallest right wing back in the history of the USL, I feel like. But, it was good to see him get out there. I'm not sure that our defensive shape was suffering from that because we were chasing the game at that point. But it was exciting to see kind of what the future of our backline can be when it's transformed. And keep in mind, that's also without Karifa Yao in that mix-up. So lots of opportunities, lots of possibilities to kind of go through that. So that's exciting to see. And then, of course, the question that I had on my mind really was, does Amos Shapiro-Thompson get the nod to get the second start? He was so impactful in that first game, getting man of the match from Defiance, and he showed it. I think he repeated. I think he was one of the brightest spots on the field in this game. I mean, he really helped lock down the middle third of the pitch, and he was like a dog chasing a car. Like anywhere the ball was, he was going. Anywhere where one of our players, made a mistake. Maxi even said every time he cost the team a turnover or an interception of some sort, like Amos Shapiro-Thompson was right there to clean up his own mistakes. Think about that. One of the most decorated midfielders in the game today in the USL Championship, talking about how Amos is making him a better player. I thought he was phenomenal. And again, we asked this question of ourselves for an entire year last season. What is Amos Shapiro-Thompson's role on this team? When we finally saw it, he was thrust forward in that 10, like false 9, kind of like what we thought maybe Kevin Vang would be with the minutes he got. We weren't really quite sure what he would do. And then Amos Shapiro-Thompson, now more in this 6 and 8. Kano said after the game, he sees AST as a 6 or an 8 primarily, just dogging everyone. Right? He had Jackson Ewell in his pocket for a majority of the game. And Amos Shapiro-Thompson, I think, is like 5'3". I think the Atomic Ant from Toronto FC, I said this on the recap, I think he's taller than Amos Shapiro-Thompson. You would have never looked at saying body size or height was getting in the way of Amos Shapiro-Thompson putting on a defensive masterclass. He was phenomenal on the pitch.
Yeah, this maybe gives coach some kind of interesting thoughts here, because Haribo got left out, right? Because AST was having such a great match before and another great match again tonight. So at this point, maybe this form is going to continue for him, at least in the near future. And as our midfield is kind of where we actually, don't have as many health issues, right? It's up front and in the back. So in the middle, we have plenty of people. And so to a certain extent, maybe we're playing some of these people out of position. But once everyone gets healthy, I don't know how coach is going to manage all these people here.
So question for you. Do you think, though, that, I mean, it felt like Zach Haribo getting the, riding the pine at the beginning of this match felt more like managing the minutes across the need to preserve players for this 3-game series. Do you see that that's the case? Because one, it's still the Open Cup and you want to let the players, it's almost an insult to say he's a more junior player at this point, but let those players shine in these cup rounds and save a player like Zach Haribo for the performance against Monterey Bay this weekend. Zach Haribo, like, to say he's not on the starting 11 feels pretty insane, just given some of his early performances in terms of his offense and defense. I don't know that I would swap that. It didn't work out because obviously we didn't advance into the Open Cup, but if we had, we wouldn't be talking about this. Do we think that there's going to be a real challenge for that secondary 6 spot between Haribo and AST?
Possibly, but then also, don't we have another midweek game next week?
Sure.
Right.
Again, so, it's a great problem to have this depth
for right now with so many games, but maybe as that starts to go out later into the season, maybe some of that spreads out. Everyone's healthy. How do you find that balance?
Yeah. And remember too, by the August window, we pretty much solidified our starting 11 with the exception of having to rotate for change. We really started to see kind of, coach went from that chop and change where I think, what was it, the first 17 games, he didn't have the same roster from game to game. And then we really start to see that kind of get solidified in that that back end performance. So let's talk about the goals themselves. Actually, just to talk about the overall performance, the title of this episode is the Undeserved Loss Pod. You could call it the Undeserved Win Pod as well. Overall, we saw a very tough, well-fought battle against a Caleb Porter side where he intended to rotate. He was very proud in the post game about talking about how none of his starting 11 from the Toronto game in terms of first team players even dressed for this match, and that he had all this confidence and all this trust in the depth of his, first off, his second team, as well as the academy players getting the call up, and then just kind of those rotational players. Want to ask you, did this game feel like an undeserved loss?
It definitely feels like it from our side, in the sense that watching the match, it felt like RIFC were fighting tooth and nail. They had lots of good opportunities. I think if you look at it from a purely statistical point, though, you wouldn't get that. You wouldn't see that, because the Revs were equal, if not better, on most of the stats. But they didn't feel as cohesive. They didn't feel like a team that had played together a lot. The reality is that there were only 2 players out of that starting 11 who are actually MLS Next Pro team. And although those weren't starters, you go through all those players, these are all MLS like quality players who just aren't finding minutes in the team that Caleb Porter has selected. Because we know last year he had come in, he didn't have the opportunity to set up the team the way he wanted to. And so now that he's had that time to change things and they're finding success, all of these other players that they have like accumulated over the past few years are kind of riding pie now. So these are players who could actually probably go play on some other MLS team somewhere, but Caleb Porter just doesn't have a use for them. There's a lot of experience out there. We weren't actually playing a bunch of kids. You look at like Max Arudi, he's been around forever. Sands has some experience.
Did you see the video from the journalist in the press conference?
That someone was trying to kind of spin the narrative that we are playing against a bunch of boys out there. But the reality is
is Andrew Farrell a boy?
I mean, yeah,
I don't want to harp on a fellow colleague who's in there. I know we all have said things that, maybe we don't want to ask out loud. I have a notorious story of something I asked Kano at the end of the Lou City match in the playoffs that I'll take to the grave. But like that was true. It was not. People are trying to set this narrative of, it was a cup set because it was all MLS Next Pro players that cup set a USL Championship team, and that just wasn't the case. Brandon Bai, Will Sands, Andrew Farrell, those are not
Bono,
MLS 2
an
players.
Experienced keeper in the MLS as well. I mean, they were playing an MLS team. It was just a secondary MLS team.
Right. And listen, we knew that, right? We knew that this was the possible result. If they had fielded more MLS Next Pro players, there was a potential that this would be a very scrappy and hard-fought match. But we knew that if senior players were coming on, that this could be a problem for Rhode Island FC. I was actually impressed with Caleb Porter not bringing any of his like quote unquote first team into the game. They were all in attendance up in the skybox next to the press room watching the game and cheering on their Revolution teammates. But like when you look, you were talking about how a lot of the MLS teams this week in the Open Cup, they started dismantling their USL opponents, but that required them bringing on the first team players in the 60th, the 70th, the 80th minute. Like their B squads couldn't get it done against the championship. And I think that's a quality check. It's a quality showcase of the pedigree that the USL Championship is starting to become. But let's also not pretend that we are a Division 1 product yet. Coach Kano, afterwards, I asked him, because Porter had said, we are supposed to beat the USL. I don't want to lose to a team 30 minutes down the road, so we're not going to. And I asked Kano, like, what's his thoughts on it? He goes, yeah, we're not supposed to beat an MLS team when our combined total salary roster is the same price as one of their, young designated U22 initiative players. Like, it's just, it's not, you're comparing apples to peanuts at that point. And it doesn't fit the right narrative. So overall, I think it was a good game. I do want to ask you though, you didn't touch on it, so I'm gonna dig in a little deeper. Is this result a direct inflection of Jackson Lee and some poor decision making? I'm not going to put it all on Jackson Lee, but it's always hard when a mistake is driven from a keeper's decision versus something further up the pitch that then ends up, costing them after the run of play. What were your overall thoughts on Lee's performance?
I think that he's probably being really tough on himself, and I don't think you can blame it on him. I mean, you look at it and say maybe he did misjudge that there to a certain extent. But that was one of those weird cross shots. I don't remember what the wind speed was like or something. Maybe it just kind of like gave it that extra little flight, that spin. It just went over him. I don't know if you remember. I think it was like 10 years ago. There was this game, Man City versus Tottenham, where Jesus Navas sent in this weird cross that did the same thing where it just kind of sailed over the keeper and just went into the back post. And
I think Chicago Fire had that just like 2 years ago, kicked it from like the 80-yard line, and it just kept going. And the keeper was like, "There's no way this is going to get to it." And it floated right over his head.
Tim Howard has scored a goal for Everton like that. He just took a long goal kick, and the wind kind of just took it past the keeper. And keepers have the toughest job, right? If they make even the slightest of mistakes, it's a goal. Whereas a striker, if he gives the ball away in the opposition third, well, it's fine. All my friends are here to kind of like stop the play. At that point, someone else really missed their kind of man marking or tackle or.
Yeah, but I mean, so like, and here's to be really clear, right? Ace the Kangaroo writes, and I don't even think Jackson could have claimed that ball. Lots of defenders turned off too. So if I assume we're talking about the second one, my issue is not his response to it hitting the post and trying to react. I mean, he went as fast as he could. He didn't freeze. He saw it, reacted, and just tried to make the dive. I thought that was a really good, natural, like kind of showing a keeper the speed that he can have. The problem is with 4 minutes left to go in regular time, a ball floating in and sailing that close, like that's not a time to drop your arms and let it clear for the goal kick. That's
like,
a time where you
playing to the
punch
whistle type of thing where you don't stop until you know for 100% fact that it's out. I mean, when it comes to the first goal, I don't know if
I don't blame him for that. I mean,
that was a poor giveaway in the midfield.
The Meg is unfortunate whenever a ball goes through a keeper's legs, but that is 100% Grant Stoneman stepping out, trying to catch in the low block, trying to catch, disrupt, and create the counter, misses the timing completely. Maxi Rudy has all the time in the world to get the shot prepped, fires it off. It still doesn't make it. And then when Rio Hope Gunn, can't slide in and cover enough space, the ball falls right at the feet of Thomas Chancalay. Thomas Chancalay, I don't know if you know who that is, but he's kind of a good player for the MLS and for the New England Revolution. So, the first goal is, I don't blame it on Lee. It's just the optics of it, seeing it go through his legs. That's never good. And then, full credit to this team. They come out in the second half, and coach said that he just said, be free, when I asked him how he talked to the players in the locker room. And he said, I play without fear. Because what do you have to lose now at this point? You either don't win, or you show this team, you show this club, you show these fans what can happen. Maxi Rodriguez, who promised last week in the interview after the game against San Antonio, promised that he loves to score against MLS opponents, and absolutely comes through on that promise. It was his fourth goal in his career scoring against MLS sides in the Open Cup. And then he goes on to score the first ever goal for Rhode Island FC at Centerville Bank Stadium, and the first goal ever against an MLS opponent. Unfortunately, it's not the first goal ever in the history of the stadium, and it's not the first victory for the stadium. It's not going to have consequences down like long stream. I know the yappers online, they're gonna say things for the next 20 years, but does that really matter at the end of the day?
No, I don't think it matters.
Would it matter if a USL Cup or a USL Championship team gets to claim that, like Monterey Bay on the weekend?
I think it actually would be much worse if like Louisville came here and got the first win and scored the first goal, something like that. Like a team who, like I'd mentioned earlier, we don't know how many times we'll ever play this team again. So I'm not too concerned about it. The trolls, the little offshoot in the community, that'll be their bread and butter for the rest of their life, and good for them. But like it's not a big deal. I don't care.
So one of the interesting stats, we've been waiting to use our quant, the Hillside, for some data when it comes to predictive modeling, projections and whatnot. But one of the interesting things is we've started to try to unpack kind of where this team is going, because ironically, and I know it doesn't feel like it coming off of this loss, but this is one of the better defenses in the USL Championship right now, at least when it comes to goals conceded. And I'm sure a lot of people listening right now, we probably just caused a car crash tomorrow morning when someone goes, there's no way this team is that good defensively. But on average, per 90, they've been doing a better job than the majority of the league. But where Rhode Island has been struggling, and this should be a no surprise either, is the goal contribution and the offensive output. Right now, we are struggling mightily. So there's a graph up on the screen now. And the reality is that we have some players that are massively under indexing compared to their 2024 stats in a lot of big ways. So, there are a couple of outliers I want to be careful about. You look at players like Zach Haribo, who only played half the season and is historically not known for score. I mean, he scored 4 goals last season, so like want to be really clear about before that. I think he scored 4 goals in his entire professional career.
Yeah.
You also have to look at players like Joe Brito, who made the most of the minutes that they had, but started the season and then kind of fell into a supporting cast role. Where I'm really looking in terms of the production numbers right now, you got to look at Noah Fuson. Noah Fuson right now, way off on his index. He's at a negative 0.67 in comparison to his 2024 stats. And remember, that's the golden playmaker right there. So far this season, he doesn't have a single assist or goal in the regular season play. Been doing great in being a supporting cast member with the cup runs in the Jägermeister Cup and in the Open Cup, but so far hasn't seen any term of success. And you see him all over the pitch. You see him running around, making the necessary dribbles, taking on defenders, getting the crosses in, shooting. He's got a lot of shots, but nothing from it. Do we need to start focusing on the clinicalness of this? Because right now, per 90, the only player that's above their mark is Clay Holstead from last year. And then, Chico really close. He's knocking on the door. But that's also because Chico had such a long, he was hot for a while. He's very streaky. Are there problems with this Rhode Island team right now, or is this more give it time that we need to kind of wait and see?
I think it's definitely a concern. And I imagine coach is looking at it, but I don't know if it's like panic button yet. Right. Maxi is a new part to this team. So that's still kind of figuring out. We've gone through a lot of injuries, and while a lot of the team did stay the same, there's some tweaking going on here right now. We thought, is Clay the answer to a right wing back? And now maybe it's Rio Hope Gund. And, we weren't sure if Quizera was going to go on to the right. Wasn't sure if that was a thing. And now that kind of seems to be the spot where he's been playing. And so there is within our own system a lot of kind of flux that's been going on. So I think come in a month or two, if some of these numbers haven't improved and results aren't there, then you start to think, okay, well, what really is going on? I think we're still early days to a certain extent here that it's definitely something to kind of keep in mind. Noah, for instance, all the work that he's putting in off the ball, are we not getting the best out of him because we're making him work so hard? I mean, like a good example was Liverpool this year. Mohamed Salah was unbeatable this year. And, there wasn't a lot of change between Jurgen Klopp and Arne Slot. But one of the main things that he did change that really helped the team out a lot was he kind of stopped making Mohamed Salah work so much off the ball and let him do what he does best. So I don't know if that's a small tactical role that maybe he would look at. I don't know if that, we're talking about Noah Fuson and Mohamed Salah.
They're the same player.
Basically the same guy. But maybe he's not getting into the positions he needs to be in because we're moving him around. We haven't found his actual spot. And even for last year, the team kind of started slow. Even he did as well too. So I'm not concerned just yet. But
when do you get concerned? Because, we can go through that denial period where, okay, we get to 10 games and then we take the hard look in the mirror. We get to 15 games, 20 games. Where do you start asking yourself what needs to change for this player, for this tactic style? And, if we say, well, we need the best 11 possible that coach has envisioned for this team, that could be into the end of July. So, that would put us at about game 15 to game 17 in the season. Is that really the amount of patience that fans need to build in to be prepared to see this team really start to unlock its players and start seeing the kind of same performances that we saw last season?
I think if let's just say arbitrarily a month from now, if we don't see improvements, I'm not saying every single player needs to improve their goal scoring numbers, but as a whole, if we don't see some sort of sign of improvement, then we start to think, okay, something's wrong here. And maybe this isn't going to turn out to be a great season,
I mean, time will tell. Time will tell. Getting back into the storyline here, back to that Jackson Lee piece, just kind of running down through the rest of this rundown. I know we talked about Jackson Lee. There was, there's those people online that say Jackson Lee would have saved that whenever Koke makes the mistake. Would we have benefited from having the leadership and the presence of our Capitan?
Yeah. I think that's, like I said, the goalkeeper position is such a tough job. One small mistake kind of costs your team. I don't think that would have changed a thing necessarily to have Vegas in there instead of Lee. Maybe slightly would have changed the way we play, right? We know Koke is super comfortable with the ball at his feet, loves himself a good pass. But also that's nothing to take away from Lee. We know he is a great shot stopper. And whenever Kano has called upon him, he's always put out like big performances for us. So sometimes it's just the way it happens.
And then final kind of piece to the game itself. Want to talk about the tactics. It seemed like there was a little bit of a change in the halftime. Aldair Sanchez, and full credit to producer Torn for catching up on this. He inverts Sanchez for the two wingers, and full credit to the Revolution. They did have a solid back line. When we switched to the wingers and continuously tried to play out wide, it felt like it was always a double marker situation. We could fire in a cross, but it felt like we couldn't get far enough up to be comfortable and let our midfield players, our second runners, get into the box before the balls sailed through. Sometimes the crosses were a little sloppy, but outside of that, it was the speed that they were trying, because they needed the speed to get past the back line of the Revolution. Are the tactics working for this team right now, or is this just we're missing JJ, we're missing that big player? Because I don't think Chico had as effective as a game as he probably would have liked. He only got one shot in the game, wasn't on target. It felt very similar to the header that he missed last week, just out wide. I guess I'm curious, is it the lack of a player in the midfield, whether they can win the headers when we're at speed, at pace, throwing balls into the middle, or is it a player that can really hold the ball, power through a back line with force and turn and shoot? It feels like a lot of our attacks coming from out wide recently, and I don't know that that's connecting. We got the one goal, is beautiful with Maxi, picking up and shooting, but Maxi's, if that's the version of Maxi we get, that's akin to the Maxi that was successful in Detroit. We were led to believe that that's not the type of player Maxi was going to be this season. Are we defaulting back to the lessons that Detroit City taught us?
Maybe, but I mean, some of that seems to be some necessity, right? We are having, from the short amount of time this season, the evolution we've seen, right? We're having troubles at the back. We've got injury concerns. We changed to a 4-back line. And then all of a sudden that kind of starts the solidity of our back line. Then we're kind of swapping around some of the midfield there a bit. We're, Jose Quizera, I think at this point really isn't going to be a left wing back for us much anymore, unless,
I don't know, Frank Nadarce on that right wing back. There's a part of me that wants to say, hey, let's see what we go back to what we saw last season.
And that you would put him in the right back position. And then the thing is, when you attack, then Jose would tuck in, and so then Frank would push up.
We wouldn't go back to the 3-5-2. We would continue.
I don't know.
This 4-2-3-1.
I think that because the 4-2-3-1 is just the starting position, right? I think we'll still always continue to attack in some version of a 3-5-2.
If you see the heat map and the average positioning, it's very much a 3-5-2. Aldair is advancing so much further up the pitch. It is still a 3-back system.
And it just works so well, too, with Koke being such a great passer that he is. He kind of joins the back line, becomes an auxiliary.
Right, but you're not answering the question. With Frank Nadarce back,
we played an MLS squad. I think reading too much into this game is actually like a fallacy. We should look at it.
No lessons to be learned from this match?
I don't think there's no lessons to be learned, but maybe some of it is just unlucky. If we look back to the San Antonio match, if one of those shots went in, we won that game, and then we come here midweek and we lost to an MLS side, I don't think there'd be any issues. We just say, fair enough, right? We played an MLS squad. We went out there. We went toe-to-toe with them. We made them really work for that victory. We can be proud of ourselves and like hang our heads high. I think that the goals will come to a certain extent. We saw this last year too with this team. It's like the frost is still kind of thawing off the team. It takes a while for them to kind of get going. In the same way that when teams really stifle us, it's because they don't allow us to build up any momentum. Once we get that momentum build up, I think it's going to be very much similar to what we saw last year, where we'll start to really get into our stride. We'll really see who this team is. It just at that point, it'll be like, will it be too late or will the other teams be too good?
Evan reminds us, hey, Jason, RIFC did score against an MLS squad that hasn't conceded in a month. Remember that? Seth went to great lengths to explain to us how this may be the best defensive performance in the history of the New England Revolution, and it's one of the best defense performances in MLS currently.
The Open Cup match?
No, well, we scored against a Revolution side. The argument to Evan's point would be, well, we didn't score against their first team. We scored against other players there. But nevertheless, final question before we move on to our preview. Overall, I want to ask, how big of a deal is it to see Defiance being able to finally light the smokes, getting to hear Psycho Killer? Did that bring it all home for you? Is that what the fans needed? And should they be expecting to see more of that this Saturday?
Oh, absolutely. And like I mentioned kind of at the top of the hour, like people are still really excited. No one's like, oh, it's cool, but it would be nice if they won. Like we're not there yet. We're still we've got that grace period where it's the new shiny thing. The vibes are there. It's fun. It's a beautiful stadium, especially at night. This time we got to see the first match was kind of in the afternoon. So
the lights on was really exciting.
They should do some sort of thing with the bridge.
Because 95, that bridge needs to be able to work in tandem. They've got all the
it's
LED
blue,
piping.
But like, what if it also flashed?
No, it's just LED. You can make it any color you want.
Yeah, so there you go.
That just needs to be a cross collab with the city of Pawtucket in the near future. But we are going to talk at great lengths on if goals are going to come this weekend against the Monterey Bay team heading in to Centerville Bank Stadium. And I can't think of a better person to talk all things Monterey Bay than the one and only Chris Moulton. Chris, how are you doing, sir?
Hey, what's going on, guys? I'm doing great. How are you?
Living the dream right now, my friend. Living the dream. Hey, listen, Chris, you're all the way over on the West Coast, probably having the time of your life weather-wise. We're getting some good weather here nowadays, out here watching some soccer in action right now. Want to thank you for jumping on first and foremost, and also get people tuned in on who you are, how did you start the Union Report, and what's been your overall connection to Monterey Bay?
Yeah, so I don't know. I have a buddy that I do it with, Andrew Martin. He's not here right now, but me and him actually met each other because of where our season tickets were. We just happened to be like on opposite sides of the aisle of one another, and he has a background in reporting on minor league baseball, and I was just a huge sports junkie. And we kind of said, hey, you know what? Like, we should totally do something for the Union. And so that's kind of how it started. From there, you have to make some inroads. We didn't know anyone at the club at the time. And so more or less, we asked some questions. We talked with President Mike DiGiulio, kind of weaved our way in there, I guess you could say. And now we're doing club interviews every Tuesday. We're putting those up on our YouTube. We're writing articles on our blog. We have pretty much all the socials, and I think us and a couple of we're not like a supporter group necessarily, but we do have like Rising Tide and some of those guys that we collaborate with from time to time. And so at this point, we're just, I don't know, MBFC junkies that love to spend our time promoting the club in a positive light.
It sounds very similar to our own journey. We've actually held you to a very high standard in terms of your access that you've gotten in partnership with the club. That's something that we continue to try to grow. we've done it as organic as we can, and sometimes it's like we got to ask the tougher questions, be like, hey, like, what's preventing you from letting us have, Maxi Rodriguez next week? So they've worked really well with us, but it's exciting to see you guys kind of lead the charge on that. I don't know if there's a lot of independent coverage within the championship that has that kind of profile access and link directly to the team and players themselves. So it's been really exciting to see you guys operate. And so how many years how many years has the Union Report been in existence?
We started, it was kind of formally, I don't know, talked about toward the end of season 1. And so this is like our 3rd year, and we didn't really get that level of access actually until this past off season. It was just one of those things. The team was doing a huge rebranding. They tried to move away from the Frank Yallop years and move into the Jordan Stewart era. And I felt like we had a really productive conversation with Ray Beshoff, the club owner, and Mike DiGiulio, the president, and just said, hey, look, we just want to portray the team in a positive light. Our stated goal for the Union Report is longevity for the club. We're in a very, I don't know how much cost of living is out there in Rhode Island, but it's insane over here. And, just trying to have this thing. So when I'm a grandparent, my grandkids can go and watch MBFC games. And so I think that they like that and decided, hey, you know what, let's get these guys in there. So
I think I saw MBFC was selling tickets at Costco, like other major sporting events and stuff now. So you guys are becoming very, very worldwide in the sense of what Monterey Bay has to offer there. So
get yourself a $1.50 hot dog and a Monterey Bay FC ticket.
Yeah, there you go.
Perfect. So before we jump into this preview, we have some unresolved beef that we need to settle for the week here. And that is, of course, the USL Championship save of the week. I've watched the video on these players from last week, and Campuzano, who's going to be a large talking point, I have a feeling tonight, has already won this. I just read an article earlier today. He's already being forecasted as the keeper of the year. I watched these saves, and I'm blown away at the bias here going on right now that your keeper is leading the results poll right now, because one, he's already gotten it, but two, I watched that save and you can't even tell if that goal didn't go in or not. So the idea that that's the clear and cut favorite or obvious choice, whereas you see our Koke Vegas flying through the air, I don't know if I agree with this. What are your thoughts overall, Chris?
It's tough to be hard on Nico. He does his best. He has won it before. We have a very strong contingent of voters out here. And, it was something that has kind of come up just in this year, actually, because for the longest time, we weren't getting any player of the week, save of the week, player of the month, anything. And I think that we've seen a uniting of several supporter groups, and I think that has really been the thing that's pushed our guys, especially Nico, over the line as far as getting the popular vote.
So what I'm hearing is this is a popularity contest, and the real deserved keeper on this isn't getting the day.
So what Chris is saying is the Rhode Island fans are letting us down here. You guys got to get out. You guys got to get out there and vote.
We invited you to our show, and this is how you disrespect our fans.
Hey, no, I think because you guys have like one big supporter group, right? Is my intel correct? You guys have like
correct. The Defiant 1636 are completely on the south end, and they have 3 full sections. One of them dedicated to standing only. The other 2 are unlocked where they can stand or sit down. But yeah, it's an exciting experience.
Okay, so and that's kind of my soccer experience, football experience is about 5 years in total. I wasn't even a fan before the Union came to town, so bear with me. But everything I've seen, it's like, okay, you have one big group. Well, for some reason, we have like 4 or 5 small groups, and they were always not infighting, but they just weren't working together for a common goal. And so now I think that they've kind of come together. We're seeing the fruit of that in voting and things like that. So
I California struggles with its supporter culture identity. Every single soccer team has numerous elements or versions within the larger supporter group ecosystem of like, this is our small little tribe. This is our small little tribe. And on game day, we'll try to all get along, but there will be conflict internally that the larger crowds will never know about. But I will tell you, having been in this business now for just a few years ourselves, there's a lot of politics. I mean, you probably know this from your side of it too. A lot of politics that go on in the day to day.
I mean, like the 3252 pretend to be one giant group, but it's just a bunch of little groups.
And then as soon as there's something that goes wrong, they're outside just punching each other. So, yeah, it's a thing. But let's hashtag not an MLS podcast. Not here to talk about LAFC for sure. Let's get into this game itself. Let's talk about the head-to-head record here first and foremost. The last time these two teams faced each other, we saw it in a very interesting way where, it was the first road game for the history of Rhode Island FC away as they headed to a very windy Cardinale Stadium to draw 2-2 against the Monterey Bay FC. The game had several notable firsts, first including the actual first Rhode Island FC goal in club history, because Mark Doyle's own goal does not go down in the records books. With Albert Dequa not only getting the first goal, but getting the first brace in club history. It was the first time we would lead a game. It was only a total of 12 minutes across both goals scored. But then it also saw the first injury to an RIFC player in Koke Vegas coming off in just the second game of his career with Rhode Island FC that gave Jackson Lee that stint all the way through the win in Las Vegas. In that first matchup, MBFC was technically the better team. I won't deny it. They created more chances, created more shots and shots on target. And they also showed a defensive fortitude when it came to winning the lion's share of aerial and ground duels. We didn't realize at the time because we were just so in love with what had happened in the game. Just we were excited to be there that, I don't think we really truly reflected back on what Monterey showed early on in that, but by contrast, and this is the RFC part, RFC very much like this Revs game that we just saw this last Wednesday, dominated the middle of the mid third, doubling the accurate passes and total passes against that Monterey side, showing that the high press was going to be something really incredible, allowing us to get multiple turnovers. And we led in total domination of touches in the opposition's box, but it still ended up even Steven after 90. So we couldn't figure it out yet. Monterey Bay at that early time was flying high. I think you guys were in second place in the Western Conference, a role you're similarly in right now. And it's just exciting that these two teams are now coming back together. However, this time you'll be dealing with us and maybe a windy game here at Centerville Bank Stadium. We don't have the weather yet for that, so we'll talk about that a little later. Chris, going back to that match, Jason, chime in too if you want. Just curious, you were our first, and you never forget your first. What was it like having Rhode Island FC for that first away game for us? What was it like playing them? What was your overall vibe on that team as they entered into the league in 2024?
So I was super excited having just, been an expansion team a couple of years prior. I understood the experience. I thought you guys were just gonna, 11th, maybe 12th in the East, and no, that was totally different. But going into that game, actually, the first thing that struck me was there was Rhode Island fans in attendance. I actually took a picture and posted it because number one, back then we've rebranded, like I said, but you guys' jerseys are just awesome, and I was like kind of jealous, and so I was like, hey, can I take a picture with you guys? And so that something like that where you're seeing supporters travel like literally from coast to coast really spoke to the level of devotion that Rhode Island fans were gonna have. I mean, obviously it was really early on when you guys came to play us, but I thought, you know what, we're gonna run right over them. And I was not familiar with your style of football back then, obviously, like more so now. But I knew you had Dikwa, and he was, you had some big name guys that were in USL previous, and so um, I thought, you know, hey, we're flying high. Like you said, we're going to take care of business. We had a healthy roster at the time. That didn't last very long, but yeah, I honestly thought it was just going to be a steamrolling, and I was wrong. It was such a competitive and physical game. So that was my thoughts on when you guys first came out here to Seaside to play at Cardinale Stadium.
Jason, do you even remember that game at this point, or is it just too many minutes, too long ago?
It is a long time ago, but now that we're talking about it, I'm kind of like playing through some of the scenes in my head. And I think, didn't they Monterey Bay score off a free kick or something, or at least a set piece something?
There was, I just remember one where the corner flag was blowing. It was literally horizontal to the pitch because the wind was at like 21 miles an hour. And I do remember Tristan Traeger had a phenomenal run, and basically he created his own chance and then scored a goal. So I remember the Traeger goal more than anything, and then that flag. But all in all, still good times. It was so exciting, and it led some success for us. Maybe not so much for you. And so that's why we want you on here, Chris. We want you to set the record straight. First and foremost, can you get our listeners up to speed on what's been going in this new Jordan Stewart era? Like, this team feels like it's completely transformed from where you were, even though the table results were about the same from this point in the league standings last year. This is a completely different team, if I understand correctly.
Yeah, thank you. It is absolutely, completely, I mean, not 100% as far as personnel, but everything else from, our crest. Our crest is different now. There is a new attitude. Like I told you guys, we interview players every week. We've interviewed Jordan Stewart 6 times. We're going to interview him next week, and there is just a different vibe in the dressing room, as far as players and the synergy. From a tactical standpoint, it's a new look as well. I think Jordan Stewart did a wonderful job scouting the globe to find guys that were going to fit his system. We filled every international slot, and it wasn't just like, oh, this guy's an international player. It was like, hey, we're on the plane, we're headed over to Sweden to pick this guy up. And so it's such an attractive brand of football. I have notes, and I don't want to keep looking down, but bringing on Jeremy Clark, who was his first assistant when he was at the Town FC, which is the San Jose Earthquakes MLS Next Pro team. Using those connections, bringing some of those guys in, and just bolstering the roster for his style. Because if you recall, I mean, maybe you do, you don't, I don't know, but Frank Yallop was relieved, midway through last season, and Jordan came on and did his best with the guys that Frank had brought in. But after the season was over, he got to work. We promoted Simon Dawkins. So he's the guy that's, literally cell phone glued to his ear at all times during the off season. And he's this new sporting director, more or less. And so it's amazing to see, this going from what we knew Frank's system was to seeing Jordan's system, and just how it works and the intricacies of it and everything. I think we have 3 or 4 returning players, and that's it. It was almost a full wipe of everyone that we had. So definitely new look and a really, really new feel. The energy in the stadium is incredible. So we're excited.
If we could get Kano at that level of access, I think he would kill at least me. He loves you a lot, Jason, but I think Kano Smith would put his hands on my neck.
Do you remember what game was it that Frank Yallop was at Burns Stadium? Was it right before?
It was the game right after he got sacked. So A lot of people don't know this. Again, we've got stories for years when we write our memoirs, Jason. But Frank Yallop for some reason, was at the game immediately following his release from Monterey Bay at Burns Stadium. And I did the double take, and I leaned into someone and said, that could be LA Galaxy legend Frank Yallop. I didn't give Monterey Bay the credit it deserved at the time. I apologize. And they said, yeah, that's Frank. And then the wheels start turning. Like, why in the world is Frank Yallop at a game at a college town, at a college stadium in Smithfield? What's going on? And don't know what happened from it. I don't know why his curiosity was piqued, but he came out, watched the game, talked with the front office, talked with the technical team, and I don't know what Frank Yallop's done since then. But yeah, Frank Yallop, just for some reason, the first thing he wanted to do was come back to Rhode Island FC after you guys let him go. So thanks for that.
Maybe we made a big impression on
him. So Chris, it sounds like there's been this transformation, and I do want to tie that into the brand reset in a bit. But tactically, if you can just kind of get us level set, we'll talk about the lineups here in just a minute. But overall, what's been the big adjustment in comparison to what we saw from this team last year in compared to now what Stewart's created? Is it the same style? Formationally, not so much worried, but is this going to be the same type of play style that we saw, or are we in for something completely new on Saturday?
I'd say completely new. Obviously, 4-4-2 is not something that's out of the realm of what Frank was running, but Frank was very expansive. He would, side to side all the way up until we get in and he'd send service into the box. Whereas with Jordan, guys, you're going to see a lot of overlapping runs on the outsides, but then a lot of direct balls through the middle as well. And I know that in the last couple of games, we've kind of gotten away from that, but we have such firepower up front now. I was listening to your guys' show earlier talking about how, there's a problem with you have so much talent and you have to sit some of it. And that's kind of where we're at as well. So overlapping runs, you're going to see definitely building up out of the back, heavy possession based football. We've struggled against a high press. And so that's one of the things that Jordan needs to address. I'm sure he knows it. I'm not saying anything he doesn't already know, but it is exciting football, and I'm excited for you guys to see it on Saturday.
That makes none of us on this side. I think back when we first saw the lineups of these two teams, but in December when the schedule's released, and I shouldn't have disrespected you, Chris, but I was like, okay, I'll take a game. I'll take a team that hasn't made the playoffs. I'll take that as our second ever home game. San Antonio, they were on the outside looking like completely disheveled, and nobody knew what they would do. And lo and behold, we end up having to play against the first and second Western Conference. I know you guys are tied on points and in third technically, but it goes to figure that we finally get our home games and we're stacked up against the best talent in the Western Conference right now. So there's an irony that is not lost on us about how well you guys have been doing. And I apologize for not believing in you back in December. That's on me.
Hey, you're not the only one. Obviously, some of our friends at USL Tactics we couldn't get any
say
love.
The names, Chris. Say the names. They're here listening. Probably say the names. It's okay. We don't shy away from calling people out. You can say John or Kaylor. It's okay.
John, we couldn't get any love until the OC game. And we came out and, put on a clinic against, at the time we were like, hey, it's OC. They're consistent year after year. And we absolutely dominated that game. And it was from there that I think him and others started looking at the pieces that we had and saw the potential. And I think that we're, kind of getting to that point. So
John takes bribes. You just have to give him Jaeger.
Don't tell about the Jaeger shot secrets. All right, so let's get into these current standings. I had them up for a while and realized I put them up too early. Classic editor folly here. But RIFC remains in 10th place in the Eastern Conference. We love this position. I feel like this is just like our home base for extended periods of time.
We like to be on the outside looking in.
Yeah, we
be
just
like
want to
ready,
see how the
ready
party's
to pounce.
going and then make our late arrival into a playoff run. Right now, they're now sitting on a 1-2-3 record, even after last week's draw, with just 5 points across their first 6 regular season matches. They now only have 0.83 points per game, the lowest that we've ever had. Again, it's an index where just one game can adjust it to the 2024 numbers. But, right now, not looking as well as we'd like, despite some of the tremendous performances we've seen on the pitch. I said this earlier, and someone just said in the chat, we need to work on our defense. But technically, we have the 3rd best defense in the Eastern Conference when you look at goals allowed so far this season. I know it doesn't feel like it, because combined with that, we also have a -3 goal differential. So when we've only scored 5 goals, we also have the 2nd worst offense in the league, Jason, by talking strictly on goals, not on all the other metrics that can lead up to it. The only team we're better than in the entire league right now is Hartford Athletic. So, I mean, we got that going for us. Meanwhile, Monterey Bay, currently sitting at the top of the West, they've slid, like I said, into 3rd place because of goal differential, but tied with New Mexico United at 15 points. They've been flying high. Chris, you must be having so much pride in this team now as they sit on a 4-2-2 record, led by the masterclass in defense of not just the back 4, but Nico Campuzano, who's just we're gonna, like I said, we have to talk at length about him tonight. They've limited the scoring against Monterey. Monterey right now only allowing 0.8 goals conceded per 90. That is, like, technically Louisville has the better stat on it, but when you look at the total number of shots faced by Monterey Bay, because I would argue Monterey is not as strong as Louisville. I mean, Louisville is the penultimate in this league. Yeah,
USL,
if we opened the books financially, we know the money between these two organizations. Monterey Bay absolutely just playing with an intensity and a fire that it's really exciting to see. So really excited to unpack that. Before we get into the injury and availability report, Jason, what did we learn about the pro ref situation for this week's match?
Yeah, so the ref assignment for this game, the head ref here is J.C. Griggs. Assistant ref 1 is Sun Yinka Kanhide. Assistant ref 2 is Justin Lopez. And the 4th official will be Andrew Parada. Head ref John Griggs has only oversaw 2 championship games this season. But he kind of, like, so far has been allowing the game to flow, allowing it to play, kind of under-indexing on fouls issued, in the 4th highest tolerance of going into the pocket, averaging 8 fouls per card.
It'll be interesting to see with Rhode Island's physicality. I'm not quite sure, Chris, how physical Monterey has been this season. We've always been an aggressive team, and we've seen now that hurt us just most recently this past week with Alyssa Nichols on her 2nd game of watching over Rhode Island FC this year. Really seemed to stop the flow to, pause and reset for foul calling. It wasn't a high card game. We haven't seen a lot of cards in terms of yellow accumulation this season. We've had a nasty bout with some keeping our heads out of trouble with the red card situation that we've going on. But this ref, for all intent, John Griggs seems to be someone who's going to let this game open up and play as long as, they're not doing stupid things. How has Monterey's physicality been so far this season?
I would say that a referee that's going to allow a game to play is going to favor Rhode Island. You guys, I mean, clearly a physical team. Our back line is pretty stout, and our wing play can be pretty physical, but all in all, I would have to say it definitely favors you. We're not Arsenal, where it's like a bag of marshmallows that you can just kick around, but we'll hold our own on the back line. Our size is something that I think is going to play into this game in a major way. So that's all I got there.
No, that's perfect. And we've got a very big player who's going to dominate in Amos Shapiro-Thompson, so watch out for him a little later in this game. But let's get to the availability report. Isaac Anking still out with that injury that he's been treating since last year against Detroit. talked to him at the game. He said it in front of fans, so I can now say it because I don't like sharing. Like when players talk to me and it's not in front of the communications director or it's not in front of Coach Kano, like I don't say, like, believe it or not, like we heard again from Kevin Callahan about Hugo Bacharak's injury from a bathroom. We've known the exact date for a while, but it's just not our place if they don't share it to us in an official capacity, and we don't want to burn those bridges. So Isaac Anking has been on the record now, caught saying to fans that he's looking for an end of May return, at least to be cleared by the medicos and be able to start actually, you know, being available for full contact and starting to really get the minutes and the fitness in. So technically after May 31st, any opportunity he could be cleared, he could be available. I still don't think we see him any earlier than, you know, maybe end of June, but there seems to be a desire to at least, you know, maybe be able to make a dressing for his Puerto Rican national team when they come to Centerville Bank Stadium. So that's exciting. We've already talked at length about Hugo Bacharak. He's still going to be out for about another 5 weeks at a minimum. Danny Rivera getting closer, should be around that 3-week window before we'll see him take the pitch, possibly for the first time. No update on JJ Williams. Again, I'm saying end of July until I hear a more favorable number that brings him back into the action closer. Mark still a little bit limping, no boot on him when I saw him last night, and that was 3 days removed from the home game. So he could be closer. I would say anywhere from 2 to 3 weeks maybe as well. It could be sooner though, just judging by his mobility. And then Krifa, yeah, we don't have the update because we saw he wasn't available for the Open Cup game because of red card discipline, and we haven't yet heard about it. And I haven't seen him.
I saw him after the game, just walking around, and based upon absolutely no medical training at all, I would say he's fine.
You played a TV doctor once, so that's perfectly fine. So that's where we're at on those. Coach Kano said that as of the end of the game, he hadn't heard about any, you know, injuries or things like that. He did mention that these players need to be very mindful of their recoveries, what they're eating, what they're drinking, and be ready for this long stint of minutes that are going to be put on these legs and on these bodies over the next week. But nothing else at this point that we're aware of. And unfortunately, we won't know until potentially like a media day tomorrow. So that news might have to come a little later. Chris, on the Monterey Bay side, what is the availability? Are there any players that we would likely not see that should be traveling? I know you had reported earlier today that they were already on their way to the lovely state of Rhode Island. What do you know about the situation there?
I believe Diego Gutierrez still rehabbing. I know he has been spotted in training. I don't know if he's like 100% right now. He hasn't played yet. Alex Dixon, same thing. The grizzled vet went down a couple weeks ago, and he wasn't listed on the injury report last week. Neither was Anton Soyberg, half of the Viking twins. He was out last week, but according to our sources, he should be available for selection this week. So you should see a pretty healthy squad showing up on Saturday.
Excellent. All right, well then let's get into our predictions guaranteed to be wrong. Jason, walk us through what we think the starting 11 is going to look like for the Rhode Island side.
Yeah, so as we head back into a league match now, we will see Koke, Vegas, and net. The back four in terms of defense seems to be what we're going to continue there with Rio Hope Gunn there in that kind of right back position. Grant Stoneman and Frank Nodarce there. And then with Aldair Sanchez finishing out that back line. With how good of a performance he's put in, we think that Amos Shapiro-Thompson is going to play in that holding midfielder there right next to Clay Holstad with the 3 wingers / cams, however you want to call that there, with Noah Fuson, Maxi Rodriguez, and then Jojea Quizera with the one and only Chico up top. On the bench here, we'll probably have Harivo, Aime Mavika, Taimu Okiyoshi, Kevin Vang, Cole Dewhurst, and Jackson Lee. Looks like we can kind of field a full bench there, something we couldn't do for all of our matches.
It's good to see it. I think, you know, maybe the big interchange just for the minutes managed so far is we could see Zach, who definitely came on a little later. I could see him substitute in for Amos Shapiro-Thompson or even Maxi Rodriguez if there's a need for, you know, to reduce the wear and tear. I don't think. Do you think Mabika is close enough to start getting a start to like Grant Stoneman? I watched him spraying cold water on his knees as he was walking off in the halftime of the Open Cup match. I know that man is putting.
It feels like he's been a broken man for a long time. Who's been held together by KT tape, and he really needs. He needs some healthy center backs to give him a rest. I
mean, and we could see Karifa out because, like you said, you just reported that he's completely fit and ready to go.
Based upon nothing, but yeah. Mabika looked good in the short amount of time that we saw him out there. I don't think they would completely throw him into the fire like that. Maybe what did he play? Maybe 10-ish, 15 minutes?
10, 15 minutes, yeah.
Maybe we'll see 30 or maybe even a full half of them if we, start off with Stoneman or something and throw Mabika on the second half.
Yeah, and then I'm not convinced Chico plays more than the first 45 unless we really feel like we need to keep him on. Maybe he goes 60, but again, there's plenty of other games.
And he's coming back from injury. We've got another midweek game next week. So
and we have super sub Joe Brito, which we're going to talk about here in just a second when we profile these players. But I think this is as close to as wrong as we can possibly be. Chris, let's walk through the Monterey Bay side here now. I have them set in the 4-1-3-2 that they play when they have their possession. But like you had said, they kind of go into the gentleman's game at that 4-4-2. But walk us through what you believe will be the starting 11 for Monterey Bay here.
Yeah, so the back line, obviously you're going to have Nico Gordon and Carlos Guzman kind of anchoring in the center. And then on the outside, Gadiri and Lyons. And, they're going to rotate depending on the side of the field the ball is on. Effectively they'll run three across the back, but Wesley Fonguk in the middle, and he is going to be the linchpin for that entire offense. And then midfield, Mael Malongo, Adrian Rebelar, Xavi Nalati, and then up front, Elijah Paul and Luther Archimed, who is just back from knee surgery that, man, took almost a whole year for him to get back, but we're excited. And our thought, I discussed this with Andrew before coming on, and our thought is we're opting for size here. We're trying to get our biggest bodies out there to kind of hang with the big boys, I guess, over in Rhode Island. So Archimed and Paul are big dudes that should match up well against your center backs who are like former NFL tight ends, it looks like. But yeah, that you should have available off the bench. You should have Ivanovic, who possibly could be starting in the same spot that Archimed is. He's a bigger guy, just doesn't have quite the mass. You'll have Adam Larson. Soyberg is another option that's going to be available. Grant Robinson possibly a bit available as a wing back. And then, of course, your favorite, Nico Campuzano, between the sticks back there. So...
not my favorite whatsoever, Chris. So let's get into it. We had these player profiles all written out because we didn't know at first if we were going to be able to get you for the show. So we start doing these things where we start breaking down the key players. I feel really bad for producer Torn because he started working on some really good on pieces. And like when I look at Nico's track record, it's insane. He's the busiest goalkeeper of the league this year, 34 saves. He's indexing over 50% more than his closest counterpart in Jake Maguire of NCFC or Van Okel at Birmingham Legion, which, like, if you go back to Birmingham Legion last year, Kaylor Hodges almost had to be the keeper for Birmingham Legion. So he's like, that's just to me an insane stat. But in addition to that, the fact of the matter is that when you look at his save percentage, he's at 82.9%, and that's over like 22% higher than the rest of the keepers in the league combined on averages. I want to jump right into this with this kid. And of course, by the way, he's a New England Revolution product, and say what you want about the Revs, but they know how to produce good keepers. They have created a very good system of identifying talent and then selling it on. So the fact that Nico is doing this well and that they didn't hold on to him, I wonder if someone's like, maybe we finally got one wrong here. Chris, talk us through this. There's no way this kid is this good. There's just no way that there's got to be a correction to the average, like
regression to the mean.
Yeah, it's a pendulum. He's got to be swinging back at any point. There's no way this kid's standing on his head every single game for 90 minutes. Or are we completely wrong and he's the real deal?
So I'll tell you guys, if you look at the history of our club, you have more or less you had Carlos Herrera, literally like an unknown, and you had Anthony Siaha. Again, they found him in a park in San Diego just hanging around, and they signed him. And I don't know what it is, but they have a knack, because if you look at Campazano prior to coming to us, it was like, I don't know, he had like 3 minutes over the last season or something. He's a great guy. He takes really good care of his body, yoga every day. Our entire goalkeeper core, I don't know if that's what you want to call it, but those guys, the competition, a high tide raises all boats, and those guys are constantly battling during practice. They're always the ones that are late when we get there for interviews. We're like, hey guys, can you hold it down? But man, they're fierce competitors. And I mean, if the pendulum does swing, it's going to be after the game against you guys. So I don't know. He really is a legitimate talent. And I think that's, a nod to our scouting that we did on him, and the fact that, he's a guy we like to build out of the back. He's good on the ball. From time to time, he'll make me a little uncomfortable as far as challenging an oncoming, center forward or whatnot. But I guess the thing that sets him apart is it's like a hair trigger. Like we joke, like if a fly buzzes past his head, he's gonna dive, and it's just so quick. And I don't know. I guess that's the secret sauce or something. But he's a legitimate talent, and I feel like the numbers support incredible play. Not including this week's save of the week. I want to be clear. That was take that out of anything I'm saying.
That was a goal. That was the goal. Nico didn't stop that. But to your point, when you talk about the numbers right now, just to compare it so people really understand, when you look at these two teams, not to dismay Koke Vegas here, but Monterey Bay is in first in their facing of total shots from the opposition, 3.8 average shots that Nico is now up against versus just 1.7 for Rhode Island FC. I said that we are one of the best defenses in the league, but that's a total defensive performance with the back line trying to help keep Koke and Jackson Lee from having a relatively busy game. That's not quite the case though with Monterey Bay. There are ways around that back four, and it's just Nico again just standing on his head and keeping Monterey Bay very much in the game. Is there a concern then, Chris, that the back line is eventually, like, Nico shouldn't be keeping up at this rate, and this back line needs to improve to kind of make it a little bit easier for their guy in the back?
Obviously, we could do better. I think when you have such aggressive wing play and rotation from your outside backs, you open the door for teams to come down the sides to send service into the box. And I feel like that's kind of where, we're a little leaky in that regard. Most teams aren't coming straight down the pipe at us. I mean, Guzman and Gordon are incredible, aggressive, physical, and highly technical. And so, I think you got to kind of take the full style into consideration. But yeah, it's gonna wear on him, I think, after a while. And that's why I think he's so focused on mental and physical preparation, fueling his body. He's a great guy, but I think we do need to consider the back line, like you said.
Jason, did you notice that he's also a Spaniard? That this is going to be a Spaniard versus Spaniard?
Yeah, when Chris was talking about him going out and challenging keepers, I'm like, oh, we know Koke loves himself to be a sweeper keeper. We know all about that. You know, I wonder with talking about here, Nico is being fantastic, facing a lot of shots. We saw Monterey Bay last year start pretty well, and then kind of as they tapered off. Do you think that is there any concern here that this is a hot start and that they might fizzle out like they did last year, or do you think this is the real deal?
Are you going to make the playoffs?
Not so much just playoffs, but like, is it sustainable to be where they are right now, tied for second place?
Okay, well, I'm gonna take that and run with it. So if you look at Monterey Bay, like their entirety, we're always right here at this time. That's just our MO, and our MO has been, yep, second, first, third, somewhere in the top 3 or 4 in the West, and then we hit the dog days of summer, and we just can't keep pace. But this team is different in that they are all united around one goal. I don't know if it's common knowledge. It is here, so I don't have a problem saying it, but the team made a bold move, and they said, hey, season ticket holders, if we don't make the playoffs, we're going to refund you 20% of your tickets. And so every time you talk to these guys, there's one goal in mind, and that's the playoffs. And I said earlier, there's just a different vibe in the dressing room with these guys. I don't know if we stay in third or, even in the top 4, but I'm fairly certain that this season we're gonna be right there, top 6 probably.
Did you was there an asterisk to that promise where if you guys like won through the Western Conference Championship that the season ticket members had to pay you 20% more? Should go both ways. It should go both ways. But I do want to ask, you mentioned this earlier, and just to tie it into a fun kind of anecdote, I also can't help but think, when you talk about the transformation of this front office, this team, this technical staff, you've also transformed the branding, moving into your new logo, your new crest, and you have a new mascot in Kelpie. You can't help me tell, are these the things breaking the curse finally for this Monterey Bay side?
Okay, Kelpie's the GOAT. Let's just be honest.
See, you go and say things, and now no one can take you seriously.
No,
we already have the GOAT here in Chip, the seal.
No, I think they wanted to engage the fans. I'm gonna be 100% with you guys. I told you we have lots of options. We're an hour and a half from the 49ers here. We're 2 hours from the San Francisco Giants. We used to be 2 hours from the Oakland A's. We're an hour and 20 minutes from the San Jose Sharks. We're 2 hours from the Golden State Warriors. So I feel like part of that was, capturing those fans that, hey, you don't have to drive 2 hours to go see a quality professional sporting event. And Kelpie, I love Kelpie. We're going to get him interviewed. I promise you guys that. I've already talked to the team about it. So
let me know how you do that. Because Chip is an avid listener of our podcast, and we've talked about trying to get him on, but we don't know, because we can't even, like we said, like, oh, we'll have him just like mime it out, and then we'll and like, no, absolutely not. You can't no one is ever allowed to know Chip's thoughts except for Chip himself.
It'll just be a short bit where it's just all he's speaking to us. And
we were going to do the witness protection where we blurred him out and then did like the deep voice, but we haven't landed on one yet. But no, I'm really glad that that's happening for you guys and for the fans. It's fun to see a club not rest on, mediocrity and say like, hey, like things will improve. Just trust us. It's been really appreciative to watch you guys. I mean, literally put your money where your mouth is as an organization. I know you're also a fan, so it's like you're in a duality here, but like it's been really exciting to see those commitments. I don't think I've ever heard of a team telling you, hey, we'll refund you if we suck. That's exciting. That's exciting to know. Moving back to the Rhode Island side of things, Jason, 5 games, 14 days. How does RIFC weather this storm? Or is that's the neat part they do?
I mean, you're not wrong there. I think we're going to really have to trust some of our bench here. We're going to have to dig deep. Like we talked about the new signing here, Ime Mabika. I think we're going to see some more minutes from him. And I think from there, at that point, maybe by the time we get to like our Wednesday game next week, is at Birmingham, I think.
Yes.
Like at that point, maybe he's a starter. Right. And we also just talked about how the Mad Dog AST has been kind of going through, this kind of renaissance and how he's playing for us. But we also know that Haribo is an incredibly talented midfielder who can, work defensively on top of assists like we saw in Westchester. So we are beaten and battered and kind of light, but the guys on the bench there, we've all seen performances from them. So I know that we're just gonna kind of have to rotate.
Yeah, I mean, I feel that there may be some conserved energy, some conserved legs trying to go for a second, half performance, which is unlike what we've seen from Rhode Island FC. I guess, Chris, asking and to put yourself in the mind of Jordan Stewart here for a second, when you're coming fresh off of, you've had the full week rest since you guys weren't still in the Open Cup. What are you thinking of differently if you're a head coach? How do you capitalize on the fatigue for this Rhode Island FC team that is very desperate to get a home win in front of their fans? They now have one draw and a loss. They're really eager to deliver that first win in front of 10,500 faithful.
Well, I think we don't fall into the trap of trying to play your game. I think that you guys play a very physical brand of football, and I've alluded to it multiple times. You guys, the size, it matters in this game, and we're gonna put our guys out there that he feels is the best matchup. But I think that as long as we stick to our game plan and adapt where we need to, but not just try to go blow for blow with you guys, is going to be, play rope-a-dope. Let you guys, you're coming off a short break, and we just continue to do what we do, and that is press the attack, tire you guys out. We're on fresh legs, you're not. Jordan knows that, and I'm sure that he's got something up his sleeve for that very thing. So
I mean, the obvious answer for Rhode Island FC is to rely on the incredible abilities of one super sub, Joe Brito, which, by the way, Jason, he now leads the team in shots, on the largest number of shots per 90 on average at 1.7. So he is besting even the likes of Chico, JJ Williams, and Maxi Rodriguez. What does that say to this team right now where Chico needs some time? We haven't seen him really get to where we want him to be with JJ Williams out, and maybe not even seeing Joe Brito until the 65th minute and beyond. What does that say for the offensive quality we're going to see on this game this weekend against a very tough defensive opponent?
Yeah, I think that kind of reinforces how much like our offense kind of needs to get in gear. We've seen that there be chances created, but maybe they need to be some quote unquote better chances. And then also sometimes it doesn't have to be a perfect chance. Maybe some of them just need to have a little more confidence and just give it a go. Test the keeper, see if he's, really worth his salt, as they say.
And then Chris, kind of back to you as well. Monterey Bay now has only scored 3 goals in their last 5 matches. It seems as if the offense hasn't been clicking as of late. What's the story there, and what do they need to do to overcome that deficit?
I think in the last couple of games, you've seen teams kind of adapting a little bit to the style. I think our cup set against El Farolito in the Open Cup kind of exposed us a little bit, and I do feel like the team is pivoting as far as sticking to the same old thing. They know what teams are going to be looking to do. If you guys, you're going to come out, you're going to press high, that's going to work well. At the same time, if, I want you guys to sit back, I want you to park the bus and just hang out, we're going to absolutely dominate. And so I think that as far as Jordan's game plan, I can't speak for him, obviously, but to me, it seems like, adaptability of his offensive scheme is going to pay off in spades. This week specifically, we've had a couple of our frontline guys injured, and they're all healthy now. So I think we're going to see a good, rekindled attack.
Must be nice that that's all coming together for you against us. It's fantastic. Jason, what does Rhode Island FC need to do to get all 3 points and deliver that first home victory in front of their fans?
I think RFC really needs to kind of lean on their physicality here. If it's true that this ref is going to let it be an open game, kind of use that to their advantage. I think the real main thing, though, we've seen this team kind of grow throughout the short span of what we've seen in the season, they really need to convert some more of their chances, right? That they are not being lethal in front of goal. And I don't think if this team doesn't score at least 2 goals, I don't think we even think about winning this game.
Okay. Chris, how about you? What say you on what Monterey Bay needs to do with all of this health, all this talent coming together here at Centerville Bank Stadium?
Well, I would say that we need to play our game, keep your guys' physicality. Don't try and go blow for blow. We're not going to win that match, but use the speed that we have to negate the physicality. I think that if we can break through early, which is our MO, we're going to try and throw everything plus the kitchen sink at you right from the get-go. But what we need to do most of all is keep possession. Jordan's offense is very, very heavily predicated on having the ball. And if we can do that, if we can maintain possession and build out of the back and move slowly as far as developing the play, but quickly when it's time to strike, I feel like the result is going to definitely be favorable for us.
I have noticed in looking over the stats for Monterey Bay that there's definitely this disconcerted effort where they implement a higher press similar to Rhode Island, where they want to intercept the ball in the opponent's final third, or at the highest in the middle third, but they want to quickly catch in that interception and move through a counter themselves, but they don't commit the entire team forward. I think it's Wes Fonguk. Is that,
yeah.
He seems to be that, like what I saw Connor McGlynn being last year for us. He's that true number 6, which in this league, an individual number 6 isn't something we see very often. We usually see the double pivot or the CM pairings, but Fonguk is very much like the tip of the spear. And if the back line does extend forward, he doesn't range very far. So on the counter or on the break, if we are able to move the ball back forward from Monterey Bay, it doesn't really go centrally. There's no verticality in towards the middle of the field. So a lot of this game is going to be decided, I think, out on the wings for Rhode Island FC, if they can take advantage of it. And if that means we're at the wings, we just don't have as big of a body with Chico. He's not JJ Williams. Like, Chico's tough. Chico's strong. But I'm a little bit more concerned on how we're going to win those aerial duels, even with the advantages we have.
Put Frank up top.
I mean, not up top, but as a right wing back. I mean, we may see some of that. But then also, to full credit to Monterey, like Chris was just saying, when they catch Rhode Island FC in transition, they love to build up the play. They are leading the league in touches in the opposition's box. They take their time with it. They don't rush the attack. They're quick to get the ball back, but they like to break down a back line. They also, I think, lead in corners. So I think Rhode Island FC defensively is going to have to put on just as much of a performance as whatever we can scrap together on the front. I don't see this game being much of a high-scoring affair. I actually have this as a 1-1 draw right now myself, because I just don't believe that there's enough in the tank for Rhode Island. But I think we can hold Monterey, who hasn't shown necessarily that they have the ability to score over their most recent performances. I could see this being unfortunately, a very, lackluster 1-1. Lots of opportunities, lots of risk, but I don't think this will be a high, thrilling, goal-scoring affair. What do you think the scoreline might be, Jason?
I think we're going to run it back for nostalgia purposes. 2-2.
You're not convinced that we get a win until we get the win, I assume, at this point?
I'm maybe not convinced with the health of the squad right now. Obviously, I want my team to win, but I think that I think it'll be an exciting game. I think it'll be a little sloppy though. So
yeah, and just
2-2
so
for the
you know,
vibes.
69% of the fans on FOTMob and SofaScore combined believe that Rhode Island FC will get the win. I don't know what Kool-Aid they've been drinking. They must not be listening to our podcast. I just don't see us getting the win until
maybe all the Monterey Bay fans are out there voting on goalkeeper saves, not voting on their teams to win.
That makes a lot of sense. Chris, what do you got for the scoreline on this one?
We're in one accord. I see this going down as a 2-2 draw. Same as Jason. I think that for you guys, your shooting boots are gonna come back, but the same for us. We're gonna find those finishes that we've lacked the last couple of weeks, and all in all, we're gonna walk away as friends.
I was watching that Miami game last week. I don't know how they weren't up like 4-0 in the first half.
Yeah, really. Trust me.
We're all fam in their club, as they say, or in the club. Producer Torin has a 1-0 for Rhode Island FC, and our Quant, the Hillside, has a 2-0 victory. We're gonna have to reset some. We're gonna have to have a conference, an inter-podcast conference, and reset some expectations here. But getting into the weather report, kind of getting fans ready for this game. Currently, it's projected to be around 61 or the low 60s. Getting into Centerville Bank Stadium with a nice, light breeze of 12 miles per hour. It's going to be a 4 p.m. kickoff this Saturday, May 10th. So, with that sun, it feels like every time we've seen the weather, it opens up perfectly for a period of time. We haven't had a bad weather. I mean, you can count the 5 minutes of rain, but like weather-wise, it's been good. Bring your sunscreen. I can't stress that enough. Even if it's light and rainy and there's some moisture earlier in the day, don't get
those
burned.
Clouds get you.
Yeah, every time. And that should be a relatively dry affair. It'll be raining earlier in the morning, so a little bit of moisture there, but that's exciting to see. And don't forget, guys, this is going to be the first one of our $1 hot dog, $2 kids drink, and $4 beer promotions. So make sure you guys get there. There's also that free Centauri beanie or something like that. I forget, Centauro. Well, I don't know.
Centauro Oil Company,
like,
whatever.
It's what I think of when you think about Rhode Island FC. And then if you're not, attending the game in person for any odd reason, you will be able to catch all the action on NESN and ESPN Plus. And I think Tom and Nick are on the call. I've heard that there's conversations about getting all the home games. I haven't seen it. They've been at every single one now. I don't know if did we miss that news and we just didn't talk about it. I don't know. It could be a case by case right now, but you may have 790 on the radio for it as well. Before we let Chris give us the final word, Jason, any final thoughts from your side?
Before we shout out to Chris and Andrew, and I think to all of us soccer sickos out there, I wanted to make a specific mention here to Tom Franklin, the soccer zombie, who did a fantastic video on the opening match at Centerville Bank Stadium, and then the very next day went to Portland, Maine for their opening match. Fantastic content. We all put our hearts and soul into this. Like Chris was saying earlier, the cost of living, this does not pay the bills. We do this for the love of the game. So I think when you see something out there, someone really putting their heart and soul into something, you should really kind of give it its kudos. And to those who have not seen that Centerville Bank Stadium from Tom Franklin, it is a fantastic watch.
Yeah, we don't get paid. We pay to do this job. So.
Yeah.
But I agree. Go watch that. The Copa 90 video was also really fun to watch as well. Lots of good content coming out there. But speaking of content, Chris, thank you so much for joining us. It's been such a pleasure to have you here on the podcast for the first time. I hate that when we have such a great guest like yourself, that when we're in that Western Eastern, we only get to do this one time a year. But as far as I don't look, to this game, I'm not looking forward to it. I am looking forward to having you back on in the time to come. Please let all of the listeners, all of the fans know, where can they connect with your guys' work, yours and Andrew's, and how can they stay plugged into all things Monterey Bay?
Yeah, well, first off, thank you guys so much for having me. Hopefully Andrew can make it next time. I know I've seen him in the comments a couple times defending Kelpie's honor, but yeah, we're on Instagram, we're on I don't know. Andrew does it's Blue Sky or something. I don't know. Some alternative to Twitter. We're on Twitter. Everything is the Union Report. We're on YouTube, especially. You can find all the long form interviews that we've done with the team. You can find us there. We have a blog that's linked in all of our social media that Andrew heads up, and he does fantastic writing there. We just want to see the USL grow. We want to see footy in the United States be where it should be. And so, hey, you know what? If we both win our conferences, we could do this again in like a few months. So go Union.
We'd love to invite you back to Centerville Bank Stadium for a home playoff game for us. We'd love to do that. That'd be great. That'd be great. All right, Jason, let's get out of here.
All right, let's wrap it up then. Make sure everyone to go check out our friends over at Blazing Musket for all of your New England soccer coverage, including RIFC, and that's at theblazingmusket.com. You can follow us on Twitter, Threads, TikTok, and Blue Sky at RIFC Podcast. We have an Instagram at Raising Anchor. And then you can look at that website, raisinganchorpodcast.com. Anchor's up, buddy.
Anchor's up. Let's go, I don't know, eat some sea kelp. I don't know. I got nothing. We'll see you guys on Saturday.